Carbon build-up. I've only had it a week. Two years ago, I reviewed the Ford EcoSport, a small SUV based on the Ford Fiesta, and in all honesty, I found it quite disappointing. Now in 2020, Ford has released this, the new Puma, a small SUV based on the Ford Fiesta. For f***'s sake, Ford, not again. It's okay though, because this is the car that EcoSport should have been to begin with. Now before I go any further, I'm not going to bang on about how this car used to be a sporty coupe and how this car is a skid mark on the old car's legacy. Yes, this is not the old Puma. Get over it. Right, now that's out of the way, let's go over the exterior styling, which I think is fair to say will be divisive. One reviewer, I think it was Rory Reid, said the front end looks like an excitable frog, and I can see why. The old Puma may be dead, get over it, but its legacy is carried on somewhat with headlights designed to hark back to the original car. The front end may be questionable, but from the side, and particularly the rear quarter, I'd argue this is a fine looking car, especially in this optional desert island blue paintwork. The rear end is also a smart area, and the black Puma badge looks stylish and sporty. Speaking of sporty, the model shown here is the ST-Line X, so the exterior has a sportier look with bigger alloys, 18-inch to be exact, although this car does have the optional 19-inch alloys. The interior has also been given a healthy dose of sportiness, although it doesn't feel as premium or as special as the Nissan Juke I had last week, even though the Puma is more money to buy, but I'll cover that later. I do prefer the seats in the Puma though, they are set a little bit lower, feel sportier, offer more support, and they're more grippy as well. There's also plenty of red stitching, which I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for, and the chunky leather steering wheel has a flat bottom to emphasise its sportiness once more. Overall, the Juke is a more premium place to be, but that's not to say the Puma feels cheap and nasty inside. Anyway guys, I think it's time to show you how well this drives. This car, it's fizzy, like dropping a Barocca in a glass of water. I have no less than 5 driving modes at my disposal. I have normal, eco, sport, slippery or trail. At this moment in time I have it in sport mode, and yes, it does make the Puma quite fun to drive. The range of engines for the new Puma isn't exactly vast, but you do get more choice compared to the Nissan Juke I had last week. So there's 3 engines on offer, all of which are a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged EcoBoost petrol. The base engine offers 125 horsepower without the mild hybrid system and can only be mated to a 7-speed automatic. Then you have the other version of the 125 horsepower engine, which does offer the mild hybrid system, but that can only be mated to a 6-speed manual. And lastly, you've got the engine I have here, which offers 155 horsepower along with 240 Newton meters of torque. This engine also has the mild hybrid system and can only be mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox. This engine is pretty peppy, it's pretty punchy. It will hit 62 miles per hour in a respectable 8.9 seconds, and the top speed is 124 miles per hour. Power is fed to the front wheels. If you want an all-wheel drive of the Puma, then I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because, well, there isn't one. The engine offers a good level of performance. It sounds pretty good as well. And overall, it's just a nice, punchy engine. Now, do you need to have this engine in a Ford Puma? I'd argue not. I'm sure the 125 horsepower unit would be absolutely fine. And in all honesty, there's not that much difference between the 2 engines when it comes to fuel economy, on which I'll touch upon later. But if you do want a bit more pep from your Puma and you can't wait for the ST version, then the 155 horsepower engine is quite a good hoot to drive, I must admit. The 6-speed gearbox is fantastic as well, by the way. It's got a really nice mechanical change to it. It's well weighted, it's slick, and the change isn't too long either. As I touched upon earlier, the Puma is based on the Fiesta, much like it was in the late 90s and the early noughties. Get over it. And that can only be a good thing, because the Fiesta has become well known for being a fun little car to drive. And thankfully, Ford has been able to translate that into the Puma's DNA really well, but for whatever reason, Ford couldn't quite manage it with the EcoSport. I still can't quite understand why. And yes, it is pronounced EcoSport and not EcoSport. It looks like it should be pronounced EcoSport, but it's definitely Eco. Look it up.
New Ford EcoSport, EcoSport, EcoSport.
Anyway, enough about the EcoSport, onto the Puma, which is a fun, rewarding car to drive. And it's also more comfortable compared to the Duke I had last week, which is surprising, bearing in mind this is the ST-Line X, therefore it's got the drop suspension and it's on optional 19-inch wheels. And the ST-Line specification, and ST-Line X for that matter, is all about having a sportier setup. Yet despite that, the Puma, it's more compliant and it rides more nicely. You get what I mean? It's got a nicer ride compared to the Duke. Yes, the ride is firm, but would I say to the point where it's uncomfortable? No. I'd also argue these seats have got better support compared to those in the Duke, and they hold you in place better. In the Duke, when I was going through corners, I did find myself sliding around a little bit, but in this, it feels like the seat is actually hugging me, which is very nice. Another area where the Puma trumps the Duke, and the EcoSport for that matter, is driving pleasure. I've driven a few small SUVs, and to be honest, not many of them are that fun to drive. However, the same cannot be said for the Puma, because on the right road, like this for example, it is a lively, fun little thing to thread through the twisty bits. Some small SUVs, you get a sense they don't really want to be dragged around sweeping corners, but this car's pretty much got its dancing shoes on. It's ready to bust some moves. There is of course a bit of body roll, you have to expect that. It is a car that rides higher than a Fiesta. The brakes perform well, the steering's good. It's got a good weight to it, particularly in sport mode. There is a very good amount of grip because at each corner, Ford has chosen, quite wisely, for Goodyear Eagle F1 tyres. So Ford, I commend your choice of rubber. Now, with this car being a mild hybrid, it'd be rude not for me to speak about the system. As you would expect, there is regenerative braking, so if I lift off, I can feel the car gently slowing itself down as it recuperates some of the energy that would normally be wasted to feed back into the battery. And now feels like a good time to go through the MPG. So on a combined run, Ford states this engine will offer around 50 MPG, which is not too bad. In my experience, I've been getting around mid-40s. And CO2 emissions for this car with the optional 19-inch alloys, this emits 101 grams per kilometre, meaning for the first year of VED, you will be required to pay £155. Now, as well as offering better fuel economy, the belt-driven integrated starter generator, that's a bit of a mouthful, but Ford calls it the BISG for short. Thank you, the BISG. The BISG is also able to give it a bit of electric torque boost lower down in the rev range. So it means that the engine is a bit more responsive. And because of the mild hybrid system, it has allowed Ford to have a lower compression ratio for the engine, as well as a larger turbo. And you may think, hang on a minute, larger turbo, that means more lag. Normally it would do, but as I mentioned, the BISG is able to give a little bit of a torque boost lower down in the rev range to counteract that. The Ford Puma is available in 4 trim levels: Titanium, ST-Line, ST-Line X and ST-Line Vignale, with prices ranging from £21,640 through to £25,240. The ST-Line X is the model shown here, which has a starting price of £23,690. The ST-Line X is the model shown here, which has a starting price of £23,690, although the model shown here is more expensive because of the more powerful engine and it has a few optional extras. Standard features include ST-Line styling, rear privacy glass, 18-inch alloys, LED rear lights, rear parking sensors, partial leather seats, 8-inch touchscreen, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone connectivity, navigation, wireless phone charging pad, 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, climate control, B&O sound system, selectable driving modes and automatic lights and wipers. There's also a good amount of safety features as well, including 6 airbags, speed limiter, autonomous emergency braking with post-impact braking, lane keep assist and lane departure warning. This was enough to gain the Puma 5 stars from Euro NCAP, although it's worth noting the Nissan Juke Techno Plus I tested had more safety kit as standard. Once again, it's time for Ask Aaron, the segment in which you guys get to ask me questions about whichever car I'm testing. This time it is, of course, the Ford Puma. I've got your questions here, so let's go through them. Better than the EcoSport? In my opinion, a big fat yes. It looks better, it drives better, and it offers better practicality, so a no-brainer, right? 28k, ouch. Do you think the incoming Puma ST's price will slot below the Focus ST or the same? Well, the Puma ST will offer less power than the Focus ST, so I think it would be silly of Ford to offer it at a similar price. But of course, it's going to be more than the Fiesta ST, so I think it's safe to assume the Puma ST will be somewhere in the middle between the Fiesta ST and the Focus ST, but of course, that's just my honest opinion. What's the driving experience like? I like cars with heavier steering like you do. Also, a good responsive gearbox. Well, overall, the driving experience is very good. The gearbox has got a nice pleasing action and the steering has got a decent weight, particularly when you put it into sport mode. So overall, the Puma is a good car to drive. Is it worth the buyer the extra money, or would it be a better option to get a top spec Fiesta? Well, in all honesty, I suppose it depends on what you're looking for in a car. The Fiesta is a very good car, but it hasn't exactly got a big boot. So if you're starting a family like I am, I personally would go for the Puma because it has a bigger boot, therefore it's more practical. I'd also argue it's better looking, but that is of course subjective. So yes, this is more money than a Fiesta, but if you want to have that extra bit of space and of course that slightly higher driving position, then I think you have to go for the Puma. Can you tell there is a difference in its handling when compared to the Fiesta? Which one of the two would be the better choice overall? In all honesty, the driving sensation between this and the Fiesta is really, really similar. I think you'd have quite a hard time trying to differentiate the two. And that is, of course, a good thing because the Fiesta drives really well. In regard to the second part of your question, of course, I covered that a few moments ago. I suppose it all depends on what you're looking for in a car. If you're starting a smaller family, then I think this makes more sense. Not a bad looker. Average fuel economy of the 1 litre EcoBoost 155 hybrid would be good to hear. Being a direct injection, how is the carbon build-up on the intake valves? Carbon build-up? I've only had it a week. Give it a chance. In regard to fuel economy, I did of course cover that earlier. Dynamic driving compared, for example, to a Swift Sport, is it any good? Well, in all honesty, I don't think it's quite fair to compare this to a Swift Sport. They are slightly different cars. The Swift Sport is, of course, a sporty super mini, and this is a small SUV / crossover. So, yeah, I don't think that's a really fair comparison. But in all honesty, this is a very good car to drive, and I think it's up there with the Swift Sport. But don't forget, there will, of course, be the Puma ST. And I think, personally, I'd rather have that compared to the Swift Sport. Swift Sport is a good car, but compared to the Fiesta ST, I'd rather have that. So I think it's safe to say I'd rather have the Puma variant of the ST as opposed to the Swift Sport. I hope that answers your question. I know it's quite a long and wordy answer. Right, last question. This is going to be a bit of a long one, so you will need to bear with me. I do hope you're comfortable. Right, is it worth it, or is it just a jacked up Fiesta? We know the boot is meant to be the biggest in its class, but is it just the 80 litre box where the spare tyre should have been that adds to the total litre of space? Also, how bad is the rear passenger space? Because I've had 2 Fiesta STs and the space at the rear was always cramped. I'm brave. God, blimey. Right, quite a lot to take in there. Is it worth it? Well, I think that's really for you guys to decide. Yes, I know I'm the one reviewing the car, but as I've said a few times already, I suppose it all depends on what you want from a car. If you don't need this much space and a boot of this size, then go for the Fiesta and save yourself a bit of money. In regard to the boot space, yes, it offers 456 litres, but that is including the 80 litre mega box. And space in the rear, well, I will cover that in a little bit, so keep your eyes peeled. Oh, right, I need to lie down now. That's Ask Aaron, done and dusted. Oh, blimey. Someone get me a coffee. I touched upon it a few moments ago, but let me cover it in greater detail. The boot. As I mentioned, it offers 456 litres, making it the biggest in its class. technically. The Renault Captur can actually offer 536 litres, but only when you slide the rear seats forward. Therefore, your rear passengers will have less legroom. So this is technically the biggest, but technically not. Anyway, the Puma is the first car in its class to offer a hands-free power tailgate. And okay, this is a £600 optional extra for this particular model, but if you find yourself always with your hands full with kids, shopping, dogs, whatever, then this is going to be a worthwhile option. Now, the boot floor is adjustable, so you can have it set to its highest to give you a shallower load lip, but if you want a bit more space, you can of course pop it down like so, very nice and easy. But if you want to have the full Monty, the full 456 litres worth of space, including the 80 litre mega box, then you simply slide up the boot floor like so and click it and prop it into place. Now, the mega box is quite an innovative idea, and some of you will argue, oh well, yes, you could put a spare tyre in that space, and yes, that is technically true, but how many new cars nowadays come with spare tyres? It isn't many, to be honest, so that is a bit of a moot point. Anyway, the idea of the mega box is that you can transport taller items such as golf clubs and houseplants, because what any self-respecting car can't transport a houseplant, right? Anyway, there's also other things you can do with this. For example, if you've been on a nice country walk and your wellies are covered in mud, you can sling them in there, because this can be rinsed out and this can also be filled up. There's actually a drain plug at the bottom, so you can pop some beers in there with some ice. Really, the only limit is your creativity. And I've got an idea. So by the time this video goes out, it will be around Halloween. So how about a game of apple bobbing? I know, smart idea, right? So let's give it a go. I must admit, I've never done this before. This could end badly.
I'll give you a tip. Shove it. You have to get your face quite deep in the water.
Oh, my hair's washed.
You have to push your face quite deep in the water, and the apple will bob back up in your mouth.
This is impossible. Who invented this game?
It's not impossible.
It's the most evil game in the world. Oh, I did it. I didn't cheat, I promise. I'll tell you what, it's got to be an easier way to get you 5 a day. Anyway, that aside, if you want more space, you can of course fold down the 60/40 rear seats to give you 1,216 litres, and there's also this rather interesting parcel shelf. Normally I wouldn't really draw much attention to such an item, but this one is quite clever. It's made of soft fabric, therefore it will mould around your bulkier items, and because it moves in unison with the tailgate, there's no need for side supports, which gives you better access to the boot. Good thinking, Ford, good thinking. On top of that, you've got a hook either side if you want to hang up something like a bag of shopping, and you've also got a 12-volt socket as well. So overall, the boot of the Puma has been well thought out. Right, onto the rear. As always, the driver's seat has been set for me. I'm 6'2", so I am of course a taller person. Let me step in like so, and take the weight off my feet. The space in the back of the Puma, if I'm going to be honest, isn't exactly amazing, but I would argue that the knee room and the leg room is a little bit better compared to the Nissan Juke I had last week. Headroom, on the other hand, oh dear, that isn't so good. This car does of course have the optional panoramic roof, and quite often a pano roof can eat into headroom, so I think that's what's happened here. Therefore, it would be quite interesting to see how I would fit in a regular Puma. There is a plus point to the pano roof, and that is that it lets in lots of beautiful natural light, giving the cabin a nice airy feeling, because you do have black roof lining. So if I were to shut the blinds like so, shut the world out, all of a sudden it feels quite dingy and a bit cramped in here. So yes, although the pano roof does eat into headroom, it is really nice, particularly on a day like today, to have that natural light flooding its way into the cabin. Now, could you fit 3 adults in the rear? No, I don't think so, but this is of course a small SUV. It isn't really designed for carrying 3 adults in the back. However, if you're more concerned about carrying children, there are of course ISOFIX points. In regard to practicality, I would say it's average back here. There's not a lot of it, but you do have a door bin either side where you can fit a bottle. You have netting in the back of the front seats if you want to pop an A to Z in there, get your words out, Aaron, or a magazine. You have this really tiny slot down here, which I can just about fit my fingers in. Not really too sure its purpose. There's no USB port or 12-volt socket, which is a bit disappointing, Ford. And you do have a hook either side, and that's really your lot when it comes to practicality. So the back of the Puma is okay, but I definitely think there are better small SUVs out there. One last thing I will say, it may be me being picky, but I would like the rear doors to open just a bit more, because I find that getting in or out is a little bit tricky. But this may be a personal complaint. Space and practicality for the front is pretty good, although I wouldn't say there's anything that is particularly groundbreaking. Mind you, having said that, this is the first car in its class to have a massage function for the seats, and sadly, this car doesn't have it. Come on, Ford, sort me out. Anyway, let me actually get into the car, park my bottom. So practicality, as I mentioned, isn't particularly groundbreaking, but there should be enough cubbies to deal with your day-to-day life. The door bins are of a decent size. I can fit in a medium-sized bottle with no problems, and there's plenty of space left over. Very handy. You've got not one, not two, but 3 cup holders in the middle, 2 regular-sized ones, and a little one for an energy drink. There's a slot down here where you can pop your smartphone, and this model has got wireless phone charging, which is very handy. There's a dinky slot here where you can pop the key. I think it's designed for the key. It fits in very nicely there. Of course, we've got storage underneath the centre armrest. We've got a little tray in there, so you can put some loose change in there or some smaller items, and there's more space left over, as well as a pen holder and a USB port. Speaking of USB ports, there's one here, as well as a 12-volt socket. Last but not least, you do of course get a glove box, which is of a fair size. It's not massive, but it's not small either. And you even get a dedicated shelf for the owner's manual. Very handy indeed. Let me close it like so. In regard to getting a good, comfortable driving position, that is very easy. The steering wheel adjusts for rake and reach, like so. It's got a good level of adjustment, and so does the driver's seat. So I think it would be very difficult for you not to find a comfortable, ergonomic driving position very quickly. Now, let's speak about refinement. As you may be able to hear, okay, this road surface isn't particularly great, but there is a fair amount of tyre noise coming through the cabin. Now, this car does of course have the larger alloys. In all honesty, if I were buying this car, I'd stick with the 18s. There's no real need for the 19s. You get more road noise and you get a little less comfort. Yes, they look better, but the 18s aren't exactly going to look small in the arches, are they? So stick with those. Wind noise is pretty well controlled. How does Refinement compare to the Duke? Well, the Duke wasn't exactly quiet inside. I would probably say the wind noise of this car is better, but the road noise is a bit worse. Engine sounds good though. I do like the noise of the EcoBoost engines. Just hear a little bit of whoosh for the turbo as you lift off. That's quite pleasing. The engine, when you're up to cruising speeds, you can barely hear it. Dare I say the Puma is the best small SUV I've driven? It's a bold claim, but I can't really think of anything better. Okay, the Seat Arona was pretty good. So was the Audi Q2, but the Audi Q2 is a more premium product. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick my neck out and say this is probably the most enjoyable small SUV I've driven. So there we have it, the brand new Ford Puma. Proof that Ford is actually capable of making a small SUV that actually drives like a Ford Fiesta. Yes, EcoSport, I'm looking at you. Overall, I think this is an attractive package. It looks good. Okay, the front end is still up for debate. It drives well, it offers a decent amount of kit, and it has a big boot. And you know what? I don't even care that it's called a Puma. Get over it. It's just a name, for God's sake. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you have enjoyed it. If so, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you are subscribed, don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time, guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.